The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 105, recorded on Friday, November 10th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we discuss last Tuesday's election results and what that could mean for 2024. But first, the headlines.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
First up in headlines, we're going to put everyone to sleep and talk about the latest GOP primary debate. Oh God, why?
Wait.
We need this trombone.
Yeah. Or what's that one clip from? The womp 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 womp. Isn't that from like a show?
Yeah, like losing in some game show.
Yeah, we need that one. That's what we need. But you are correct. Speaking of losing and losers, the third Republican debate took place in Miami last week, and
Trump's new home state.
Yeah.
Still did not attend. Instead, he held a competing rally in Hiawatha, Florida.
And if you were like pretty much everybody in this country who did not watch this debate, we'll give you the lowdown. So they started the debate with asking the candidates why they should be elected over Donald Trump. And thank you, Lester Holt, since this was hosted by NBC, for actually asking right off the bat, what are you going to do about your leading opponent in this entire race? So take a listen and see what they have to say.
Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than where we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing.
We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk.
A lot of belly aching about
Party of losers,
the election on Tuesday,
which we'll talk about,
which is the main topic today, and asking for Trump's hand-picked GOP chairperson, Ronna McDaniel, to resign. It's all Ronna's fault.
But did you also notice how he, or as in Vivek, did not call out Trump, though? He called out Ronna McDaniel,
right,
who's like formerly Ronna Romney.
Because Vivek has been trying to position himself as, I'm just like Trump, but younger.
Basically.
So he can't criticize Trump. I think he also is trying to be the vice presidential candidate, which...
Why?
I don't think that's going to happen.
No. And I just love how pathetic Ron DeSantis sounds trying to finally attack Trump.
Well,
he's not the same guy anymore, guys.
It's just that the weak sauce that he's been bringing every single time.
And he was the same in this debate, too.
Right. The mildest criticisms and mostly just trying to protect his image.
It's
guess. Not like he's doing well. Every debate, his poll numbers go down.
Right.
But it's like he's just trying to be like, well, everyone, thinks that you're insufferable, and which you could really honestly say about
all of them.
Right. And you need to be, less aggressive because it doesn't come off the same way that Trump, like everyone tries to mirror Trump.
And this was, obviously this was only two of them, but this was the kind of feeling the entire time when people were asking this question. Obviously, Chris Christie tried to attack Trump a little bit more, but...
Hey, he's been trying to play the, I'm the adult and I'm going to be the bigger man.
Or he actually thinks he has a chance of winning.
Yeah, you're polling at 3%. You have no chance. And the whole thing, his whole lead up to any of the baits were, I am going to crush Donald Trump. That's the whole reason I'm here. I am going to show everyone that the emperor has no clothes. And then it actually came time to do it, and he didn't show up.
Also, don't you love the fact that Vivek said we should have Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk?
Well, that's his demographic that he's trying to appeal to.
I hate it. I hate this so much.
Surprised he didn't go with Jordan Peterson.
No, that's the next debate after that. So the vast majority of the debate was actually a lot about foreign policy, about the Israel-Hamas conflict, about what's happening with Ukraine, and you have China, all that fun stuff. They spent so much time diving into like the deep minutia of these issues. The debate was almost unwatchable for a lot of it, which again, just kind of goes to show you that this debate means nothing.
Right.
And it will never mean anything. But there were a couple of very telling quotes and clips from the whole thing, so we wanted to at least break those out and show you what you missed.
That's the choice we face. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first, or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case,
Ramaswamy.
we've got two of them on stage
Mr.
tonight.
Ramaswamy, thank you.
And what is Biden doing? Not only is he not helping the Jewish students who are being persecuted, he is launching an initiative to combat so-called Islamophobia. No, it's the anti-Semitism that's spiraling out of control.
Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It has consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. That's not democratic. It has threatened not to hold elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That is not democratic. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic.
What wonderful foreign policy.
Nothing but the best.
You've got Ron DeSantis, who is just bloodthirsty and just wants Israel to wipe out Palestine and Palestinians.
And we didn't even include this, but did you hear the whole, like...
I would tell Netanyahu to smoke the terrorists.
Well, I smoke the
Gaza,
terrorists. Yeah,
on his southern border, and I'll smoke the terrorists on our southern border.
What a line.
The immigrants that are trying to seek asylum in our country, those terrorists.
Yep.
Ron DeSantis is a bloodthirsty psychopath.
Oh, yeah.
He tortured people in Guantanamo Bay, and that's what he wants to do as president, allegedly.
Well, and then did you hear also the idea that he said it again in this debate, but he said it before as well, how he would just revoke visas for students if they are supposedly pro-Hamas? So cool. That's what we're going to get with a president, Ron DeSantis. We'll have secret police just running around college campuses for any like stupid little freshman who's coming in for somewhere, and then just, well, you're done. Off with you.
He would be a tyrant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, let's not just blaze over the fact that Vivek is clearly just spouting Russian propaganda.
He just called
Zelensky a Nazi.
Yes, the president of Ukraine a literal Nazi.
Yeah, which has been...
And he's Jewish.
Which has been the known line of Russian disinformation for like the past year.
Right, that's why they're invading Ukraine.
Literally.
Even though at first it was to keep Ukraine out of NATO, and then also, yes, they're Nazis in the Ukraine military.
Well, at least my one silver lining from this debate is that now at least Republicans are starting to realize how insufferable Vivek Ramaswamy is.
He got his hair a little bit more under control.
Well, and I don't know what his research team did, but clearly, like, they knew they had to attack Nikki Haley, and like that's what he did all night long. And honestly, you can tell, like, Nikki Haley hates this guy,
right.
with all her being. So, and one of them, we'll play the clip here for you in a second, is when they're talking about TikTok, where they want to be tougher on China. They want to make sure that TikTok is regulated and all that fun stuff.
They all want to go to war with China.
Basically.
That's the only thing I learned from this debate.
Yeah.
Is every Republican candidate for president desperately wants a war with China.
And then Vivek comes out with this.
In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my
before
daughter
preaching
out
to
of your
anybody else's
voice.
adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy
scum.
answer
You're just scum.
True. I do believe that he was not actually trying to criticize Nikki Haley's daughter for using TikTok, but more pointing out the fact that...
The hypocrisy, right?
Well, and that kids are using TikTok all over the country, and to pretend like they're not is stupid, and to just try to ignore it as... Because she was attacking him for trying to be the TikTok candidate. And his response was, you're missing out on a whole generation of people who are using TikTok, one of which lives in your own house. So if you're going to criticize me for using TikTok, then yes, you are a hypocrite.
Well, leave it to Vivek, though, to say it in such an awful way.
In a way that, like, the crowd...
Get your family under control!
The crowd took it the same way, too. They all booed him because it comes off as going too far.
Because he's a douchebag. So who do you think won this debate? Who do you think lost?
I would say... Nikki Haley probably came off the best, and she has in most of these debates.
She has.
But it's not going to matter. Again, who won? Donald Trump? Because he doesn't even have to show up.
And he won't. He already said he won't show up for the next one either.
Why would he? He
Right.
just keeps gaining in the polls.
Right.
And the only thing we learned about the 60-year-old virgin, Tim Scott, is the thing we already knew. He loves him some Jesus. That's all he ever says.
Oh, he was awful in this debate. And that he would probably be my biggest loser. I believe he talked the most out of all candidates, and you wouldn't remember a single thing he said.
He's pretending to have a girlfriend. That was news.
That was
came up.
adorable. Did you see all that stuff? Oh my God. But I do want to talk about one more thing. And they basically ended, or near the end, they started talking about abortion. And while lots of conservatives have many thoughts about what's going on after the last election, again, we'll talk about in the main segment.
Most of them were pushing the 15-week abortion ban, which of course has no basis in medical science whatsoever. No. There's no reason for it. It's not like that's when a fetus can feel pain or they're like fake heartbeat stuff. There is no, it's just an arbitrary number, like 15 weeks, because they think that tests well, but it's just meant to try to stop access to abortion as much as they feel like they can get away with. Well, we'll put it at 15 weeks, but we set the precedent for having a federal abortion ban in place.
Right.
And then, we can play around with the numbers afterwards. Only Nikki Haley had a somewhat different answer. She contradicts herself multiple times.
Well, that's why I want to play this clip, is because she was celebrated by saying, and it's all these different Republican strategists, we're all celebrating Nikki Haley, saying, hey, she got the answer on abortion down. That's what every Republican candidate needs to say about abortion from here on out.
Because she was the furthest away from
absolute craziness.
The typical Republican stance, the standard. She was the one that was closest to even like the most conservative Democratic stance.
Right. So let's listen to this.
I've said it before. I think you have to be honest with the American people. This is a personal issue for every woman and every man. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband Michael was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children. So I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, when you look post-Roe, a wrong was made right. They took it out of the hands of unelected justices and they put it in the hands of the people. And now we're seeing states vote. And what I'll tell you is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There's some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes to the federal law, which is what's being debated here, be honest, it's going to take 60 Senate votes, a majority of the House, and a president to sign it. So no, we haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws. So let's find consensus. Let's agree on how we can ban late-term abortions. Let's make sure we encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions. Let's make sure we make contraception accessible. Let's make sure that none of these state laws put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty for getting an abortion. Let's focus on how to save as many babies as we can and support as many moms as we can, and stop the judgment. We don't need to divide America over this issue anymore.
So she believes that everyone should be able to choose, and that's why she's pro-life.
Yep. I was going to say the exact same thing. How freaking disingenuous that answer is. And that's why I wanted to talk about, because this is a dangerous answer, because it sounds reasonable. It sounds calm, collected, and nuanced. But in actuality, it's 100% BS.
Well, and it's completely muddled. She said that states should have the ability to vote on what their laws are, which I don't think your rights should be voted on a state-to-state basis. That's stupid.
Yep.
We don't vote on if slavery should be legal in each state.
Right.
For obvious reasons. It's the same thing. Human rights are not negotiable.
Well, again, the whole point of having a federal government.
Well, and then that's what she says. So she starts with the states' rights argument.
Yep.
And then she says, well, when it comes to a federal ban, she doesn't say we can't have a federal ban if I'm advocating that it should be on a state-by-state basis because that would negate states' rights. She says, I don't think we could get the votes for it.
Yep.
Where is the consistency there? Where is her ideology? What is she actually advocating for here?
Nothing. No, and again, the way you know it's complete BS is just the way that she tried to talk, where she said, well, I don't want to judge anyone who's pro-choice, and I don't want anyone to judge me for being pro-life.
Oh, and then she literally said, and I wish the states would stop voting
for pro-choice.
Abortion.
Right.
But I don't want to judge them, but they should stop doing that.
Right. And that's only because she saw some civility-tested phrases and probably some focus groups, and now she feels like she has to come off as this nuanced person. And again, that's why this is really scary, because the typical voter thinks exactly like this.
And she even said we need to ban late-term abortions.
Yep.
Which, again, it's not a medically appropriate thing to do.
No, it was a made-up term to scare people by the pro-life side. Absolutely. And I think it's also really important to clarify here, too. Do not fall for this bait-and-switch thing that people like Nikki Haley have done and will do in the future. If you will not judge somebody who is pro-choice, or that you don't want someone to judge you for your choice, you are pro-choice. Period. End of story. If they try to tell you that they're also pro-life, they are lying to you. Absolutely the case. And you're going to have so many more Republicans say that, where it's like, well, I believe and respect everyone's beliefs on this topic. I'm just pro-life on my own side. Then they don't believe in your beliefs. They don't respect your beliefs, because the whole point of having a pro-life side is saying, what I believe is that what you are doing is morally reprehensible, and I have to stop it at all costs because you are committing literal holocausts worth of children. That is what they believe. And for them to tell you anything different, they are lying to you.
Everyone should be able to choose, but we need to have
no abortions,
a federal mandate in place. And even the idea that a federal ban is somehow protected because of that 60 vote threshold is an absolute illusion. Remember, for 50 years, everybody thought abortion was protected because of Roe v. Wade.
Yep.
And it took 3 Trump-appointed justices, one of which illegally, to overturn that. And it's the same thing with the 60 vote threshold. If Republicans have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they will get rid of the filibuster when it comes to putting in an abortion ban.
Yeah.
I guarantee you it's one of the biggest failings of the Biden administration, in my opinion, that they did not remove the filibuster when it came to voting rights and protecting abortion access. But Republicans, as we've seen over and over and over and over again, do not care about precedent. The Supreme Court has never in the history of the country removed a right that its citizens have had until last year when Roe v. Wade was overturned. I guarantee if they get the opportunity, they will make sure that abortion is completely banned in the United States. And Nikki Haley will be right there with them. I don't care what she wants to say on stage to appeal to a bigger audience.
Up next.
And this is almost going to be a second main topic. We don't have that many news stories for you today because we don't want to be here for 3 hours. I don't think anybody wants to listen to that. So yes, we are ignoring some other stories this week. I apologize, but I did not hear about this.
Wait, we'll say them really quick to at least catch everybody up. By the way, if you didn't know, Joe Manchin has officially said he's not going to seek re-election. Screw that guy. Also, Mike Johnson surveys his kids' porn, and and
they
so does,
see what he
yeah.
he's
And
got
so does
some
his
weird
son.
porn monitoring deal going on with his 17-year-old son.
There you
That's
go.
a lot of fun.
You're caught up. They're all crazy. They suck. Screw Joe Manchin. They all suck. All right, moving on.
So I did not hear about this story until I saw you put it in the show notes. I do not use Twitter anymore really at all, except when I have to find quotes or look up things for this show. That's it. So I did not know this was a thing. This is apparently a PragerU documentary that was made called D-Trans, about people who have transitioned to a different gender identity and then have later regretted that decision and detransitioned. As part of a $1 million ad campaign for this documentary, PragerU did a timeline takeover with Twitter, where they became the top of everyone's timeline on Twitter, which seems like, if that seems cheap for as many users as Twitter is supposed to have, or at least did have before Elon Musk bought it and ruined it. But of course, this goes along with Elon Musk's ideology. He is very anti-trans. His own trans child does not talk to him anymore.
Right. And I also just want to clarify too. So while this is not all on Twitter, I think just the idea of having a $1 million ad campaign to just push this one disinformation documentary.
Well, PragerU is funded by conservative billionaires.
Right.
So
we keep saying it over and over, see where the money's coming from, or see who has the big payouts for these big campaigns. It's not the trans side, it's not the trans agenda, supposedly, or the trans cabal. It's these people who are putting out these gigantic freaking campaigns just to misinform people. So let's talk a little bit about what exactly an X takeover ad is. I actually found this from X's website, and I hate that it's called X now. I'm just going to put it
You can
out
just
there.
say Twitter.
It's
Everyone
Twitter.
knows what you're talking about.
So this is from their website. With Timeline Takeover, advertisers get priority access to logged-in users' first impression of the day, along with additional impressions delivered on people's timelines for 24 hours. The maximum frequency that each person will see your ad is 3 times per day. And then Trend Takeover gives you a high-impact 24-hour takeover of the Explore tab and the What's Happening module on X.com. So basically, PragerU spent whatever X amount of money to literally push it to the front of Twitter's homepage.
For 24 hours. Even at $1 million, which, okay, it might have not even been that much, but that is very cheap to me.
And there's actually a good little screenshot in the NBC News article where it shows the For You spot, and the first thing you see is this gigantic hashtag DTrans with like their movie thumbnail and everything.
And obviously, as we said, it fits in with Elon Musk's conservative ideology, especially when it comes to transgender individuals. And it's disgusting. It's complete propaganda, or at least that it's attempting to be.
Well, of
and
course
we'll talk a little bit about what is actually in the documentary in a second. But as far as the Twitter PragerU side of things, there have been some history here.
There has.
According to the article that you linked, in June, Twitter's chief of trust and safety resigned after Elon Musk publicly undermined her decision to moderate the spread of anti-trans, and including this exact video that we're talking about, this D-Trans documentary from Prager.
Correct. Yeah, so they initially put it on Twitter back in the summer, and then it was trying to get blown up because, again, Elon Musk sucks, and Musk fought his safety officer on this exact issue among a whole host of other issues, and saying we cannot allow this stuff to happen because it's literal hate speech, and Musk basically gave her the middle finger until she resigned. So cool, right? And even the PragerU chief marketing officer, Craig Strazzeri, whatever his name, Strazzeri, super Italian, had this to say about why he chose to spend his money on X. Quote, "We decided to pursue an X takeover because it's a great opportunity for us to reach a massive audience on the dangers of gender-affirming care, that X is one of the least censored social media platforms thanks to Elon Musk."
And what he means is it's one of the most receptive to anti-trans propaganda thanks to Elon Musk.
Also, do you know what I found out recently?
And this whole thing's on YouTube, by the way, too, so it's
Yes.
not like they're being censored on social media.
Right.
So I want to talk about this documentary briefly. It's kind of our co-main topic for this episode. It's
this really turned into one.
It's become that kind of on the fly, just because when I started looking into this,
You fell down the
I
rabbit hole.
actually watched this. I refused multiple times to do the What is a Woman documentary from the Daily Wire, but I did watch this. It's only 20 minutes. I'm not sure that this is as effective as they want it to be
I agree
for
with
their
that.
narrative.
I agree with that.
So first off, there's two
Main people, at least.
There's two detransitioners that they talk about. One woman who transitioned, well, partially to be a man and then regretted it and transitioned back. And then one man who transitioned to a woman and transitioned back. So first is Daisy Strongin. So let's meet Daisy.
I had an alter ego, and he was like this boy that I like customized in my mind of like the ideal boy. Other girls looked so different than I did. They were, expressing themselves very differently.
Hey guys, so for today...
I was depressed, hopeless, and I was feeling pretty dejected and scared and alone. I didn't like life. Like, I just wanted to stay in my room all day. As you spiral into depression, it really feels like you're in a hole that is so infinitely deep, and the depression just was really debilitating in that I didn't really care about improving myself because I already felt like I was just like I shouldn't have been born. Just having really like dark thoughts. I always just felt very much like there was just something wrong with me. And I was trying to figure it out. And I used the internet to help me do that. That's where I felt like I could diagnose myself. My favorite websites were YouTube and Tumblr.
I really love this whole...
It's such a huge amount of content that I consumed at that time. I mean, I watched a lot of trans people. I watched a lot of, gender transformation videos and saw these people really just like go from female to male visually. Like they looked like men. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even know that it was possible for a woman to pass as a man that well. I just started looking into all of it. I was like, oh, so there's genderqueer, gender fluid, there's agender, there's like, you can be a demi-girl, which is when you're like 90% girl, 10% not girl. Like, there's just an infinite amount of ways that you can interpret and express your own gender identity. And your gender identity is who you are, and nobody gets to take that away from you. So hearing that, I just became very, very interested in having a male persona. So I came out to my parents as Ollie, and I went to this, I guess, behavioral mental health clinic for like 6 days. They had a meeting with my parents, and they basically told my parents that if you don't validate Oliver, if you don't validate him, then this is just gonna get worse. The best thing that you can do to help him is to accept him as your son.
Those horrible, terrible therapists, Joe. This is, in her own words, the story of a girl who already is having gender dysphoria, already...
It sounds like pretty severe gender dysphoria,
right,
too.
Idealizing life as a boy, but it's all TikTok, or was it YouTube and... Tumblr's fault. YouTube and Tumblr's fault, because once she saw, totally out of the blue, I'm sure, people transitioning from female to male online, that's what did it. That's what put the seed into her mind that she was a man trapped in a woman's body, even though in this story it started before that.
Well,
and she was like near suicidal.
Right. And again, like it completely undermines their argument, which is what you're trying to say. And you have so many conservatives who are saying, and they did the same thing with gay people as well, right? Where you have like, well, if you show two gay people kissing on a Disney movie, people people are going to get their kids turned gay or some whatever it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And you can clearly tell that's what they were trying to go for here. But they completely undermined their argument by saying she had all this stuff well beforehand.
And it was just searching it out online because she was already experiencing this and like literally went to find these types of things online.
Right. And shocker, what did she find? Oh, you can accept who you are.
Right. And your gender identity can be one of a million different things, right? It's not just that you are a trans man stuck in a woman's body. There's all types of gender expression, and whatever your gender expression is, that belongs to you, and no one can take that from you.
Correct.
And they're literally playing dark, foreboding music behind that.
It's like you scroll Tumblr.
And then I went to a doctor and did 6 days of a mental health assessment, which this documentary will tell you over and over again that they don't do any mental health assessment. There's no consultation. There's no you just say you want to transition and bam, there you're on a gurney and going to get your genitals removed. That's how it works. But everybody's stories are not that. And it's like literally this kid who's having these problems and literally is severely depressed and wishes that she was never born. And like I said, very close to suicide. When her parents ask the doctor what they should do, the doctor says you have to be supportive of your child. Otherwise, things could go very badly, which is the perfect advice and probably why Daisy is still here.
Right.
But let's meet the next subject, Abel. Abel is the born male, transitioned to female, and then back again. So let's listen to that.
Culturally, we are Mexican, and men have to be very masculine in our culture. And I wasn't the most masculine growing up, and I think that had a part on everything that eventually led me to do what I did. It was around middle school. I was surfing YouTube one day, and a video popped up, male to female, and that eventually planted the seeds of doubt. It allowed me to be caught by the ideology that eventually led me to hurt myself. Eventually, I just wanted an answer to be given to me on who I was, and I went to see a therapist, and I had only asked, I think I might be trans, I don't know, I want to know. The therapist immediately on my first appointment with her said, yes, I am a transgender woman. She had my letter to transition the same appointment. After that, I just took everything slowly.
So it happened immediately, but I took everything slowly.
Super slowly. Also, I just want to point it out too, like, as a music nerd, I recognize both that background music and other background music in this documentary as Satier's Gymnopédie, and it drives me nuts that one of my favorite pieces is being played underneath this horrible documentary. So if anyone else is a music nerd like me and also has caught those things, you're seen.
And also, because of my culture, I didn't fit in because my culture says
you can't.
I have to be very masculine as a man, and I didn't feel very masculine.
Correct.
But it was all the internet and this therapist's fault, right? If you don't feel like you are a man because your culture says you're not masculine enough to be a man, and that leads you to believe that you're a woman in a man's body, that's not the internet's fault.
I mean, this is literally what toxic masculinity can do.
Right.
And this is what we've been talking about for a while now. This is what people have been talking about with toxic masculinity for a long time now. And I mean, we'll play the clip of it because I can see it. It was in the list.
Yeah.
The way they handle it as well, or the way his family handles it, is not a healthy way.
At all.
So, and for me, like, that was kind of the thing where you can really see, oh no, like, these are literal victims of abuse and
trauma.
And literal trauma. And they tried to find a way to accept themselves. And the abuse basically is what pulled them back.
So Abel goes to see a therapist. Therapist says, oh, I've diagnosed you. You're a trans woman in a man's body. Immediate surgery. Papers for transition that same day. But let's hear about what we're kind of alluding to. What happens with Abel after that?
But eventually my father found out what I was doing. And due to our culture, he was not happy. And he took me to Mexico and had me have sexual relationship against my will with a prostitute. I was a 19-year-old kid, and my father told the prostitute, take good care of him, it's his first time. He was trying to prove that I was a man. That broke me, obviously. After that, I go back to the therapist and told her I wanted to transition. And she recommended I start my social and medical intervention as soon as I can.
How sad.
Yes. So first off, yes, this is horrible trauma. This is a rape by proxy.
Yes.
Essentially by his own father, which did damage. And that caused Abel to go to a therapist and say that he wanted to begin transition. Although, again, just a second ago, the transition, according to Abel the first time, started as soon as he questioned his gender identity with the therapist. So I'm not sure what exactly the timeline is here, and I'm not sure if it's Abel or Abel. I think I've been using them interchangeably, but we'll say Abel. Just very, very religious family. We'll go with Abel. I don't think he knows what the timeline was anymore at this point, which is normal, especially when you're talking about this kind of trauma.
Right.
But, I mean, again, this documentary is trying to say that this is the therapist, this is the internet, this is the culture's fault.
Right, like the real predators, the real groomers,
right,
are Tumblr and YouTube and these supposed gender-affirming care therapists. Like, that's what they are trying to paint as the victims. But it's their literal families.
And these are two people that have real problems that led them to this place of seeking gender transition. They've both sought this out specifically. And this documentary basically just keeps posing it should be harder. It should be harder to get this care. It should be harder to get these things approved. It should be harder. Getting anything, I don't know if you've ever had to see a specialist or had to get like referrals from, it's already hard enough. It's already expensive enough to do anything medically in this country. We don't need more roadblocks. And each of their stories belies that false narrative that this is pushing, that like it's instant. The second you say transition or gender in a doctor's office,
you get puberty blockers.
Yeah, you're in surgery like that night. But yet the actual stories of these same people that they're trying to use to spin this narrative is this gradual over time after talking to therapists and this eventual thing, right? Abel's 19 years old. I thought, after 18, you can make your own medical decisions. And everyone always says, we just want to stop this from happening to kids, right?
Well, even in the documentary, Daisy says that she does not want anyone.
Right. Well, we have also later on some of that as well. It just goes to show that all of this is a facade. Like none of what they're actually saying in the documentary between these interviews matches with what's actually in the interviews. And even the interviewees themselves contradict because they're parodying that same narrative while they're telling their story and contradicting themselves.
Yeah, and I can not in any way like of what they had to go through, but I've been in a situation that was very similar to that. And I also was once put in front of a camera to talk about my abusive, toxic situation that I was in. And I parroted a lot of what they were expecting me to say because I thought that was just what I had to say at that moment too. And I feel like that's exactly what's kind of going on here, where you have two people who are just trying to deal with what they had to go through. They don't know how to deal with it, but they were literally preyed upon by vicious, hateful people who want to use them as props. And that's it.
And finally, as far as the clips from this, I want to just give you like the stories of when they came to realize that their transition was a mistake and when they decided that they wanted to go back. So first is going to be Daisy.
I would go out into the world and everyone's calling me Ollie. Everyone sees me as a guy. But then, at the end of the day, when I'm home, in my room, looking in the mirror, I'm like, what did I do? Like, I start getting these, like, really scary thoughts of, like, you're incomplete. You're not a guy. You never will be.
Where have I heard that same sentiment before?
And almost every right-wing commentator's show.
That even if you transition genders, you will never truly be the gender that you choose or that you say that you are. That is the conservative mantra around gender transitions.
And I'm sure that any liberal person who's probably also listening to this would also probably say to that particular situation, it doesn't matter what is supposed to be supposedly objective because it's all arbitrary and made up anyway. You just have to accept and love yourself as you are.
And it shouldn't be a surprise that Daisy, throughout this entire process, because Daisy was an very online person, posted all throughout their transition. There's a bunch of videos that they intersperse in the documentary as well of this, but was kind of an online personality. Daisy was very, very substantially conservative throughout this whole process.
Yeah.
Big Jordan Peterson fan, big Blair White fan.
Yeah.
So this whole time, while she is transitioning, she is hearing, you'll never be a real man.
Yeah.
By everyone that she's following online. No matter what you do, you'll never be a man. And then what makes her regret the transition? When I'm alone by myself, I feel like I'll never really be a man. And that's why people like Jordan Peterson, people like
Ben Shapiro,
PragerU,
Matt Walsh, Dennis Prager, PragerU, Charlie Kirk,
The Daily Wire,
all of them.
That's why they are so dangerous and harmful to society, because this is what they do. But let's hear Abel's story and what his thoughts were.
I just woke up one day, looked at myself in the mirror, and asked myself, what the heck am I doing? As I realized, no matter if I would have gotten every surgery, continue with hormones, I realized I would have never been a woman. At best, I would have been a caricature of what I believed a woman was.
The exact same thing.
Yeah.
Again, someone who grew up in a very conservative household. His father
hates him for what he's doing.
Well, and literally raped him with a prostitute because of this ideology. And all that happened was Abel internalized that and was like, oh my God, what have I done? I'll never really be a woman. Like, that's both of their main regrets. Not, I don't want to be the gender I've transitioned to. That's not what I want. That's not what I can ever truly be. So why did I go through with this? And that's the problem.
Right. Well, and shocker, as you probably already think, so they detransitioned. They're back to how they were before they transitioned, and they're supposedly happy, right? No, they're still horribly miserable, and they still deal with this. And because Daisy is still a super online person who has now just become a very hard anti-trans person, we get to view that. So I don't want to go through this person's tweets because they are just a typical person. They're not a celebrity, they're not a commentator, but I do want to go through some of them just to show how dangerous this mindset of not accepting people and not loving people can really be. So let's start with this tweet from Daisy. I don't want people to think that just because I've detransitioned and chosen a more traditional path, I am now cured. I still deal with self-loathing. I'm still sick of being me. I'm still depressed. I'm still a miserable, wretched sinner. The mental ailments that led me to transition still plague me today. I still fantasize about being a guy at least a few times a week. I'm often a guy in my dreams, but now I know that I can't indulge those fantasies. I have to be the best mother, wife I can be. Jesus Christ is my only hope. He is your only hope too. And for full disclosure, since then she has gotten married and has a child.
And also pregnant again.
Yeah.
As well. And so here's the thing. I am, as always with all of this, with everything relating to gender identity, the only thing I can do is take people at their word.
Yes.
And I'm fine with that regardless of the outcome. So in this instance, Daisy says that she is happy where she is now, that being a mother is what makes her happy. I'm fine. I have zero problem with that.
Sure.
I don't think that she's wrong or like somehow like that's not really what is going on in her head, because that would make me no different than all of the conservatives that say that people that believe that they are trapped in the wrong body. Like, that's just mental illness. It's just you're fooling yourself. You saw it on TikTok, whatever. I don't believe that. So if this is what makes makes Daisy happy, if this can prevent any sort of self-harm or just a miserable existence,
then good.
I don't care.
Right. But my problem is it doesn't. And that's what upsets me the most. The idea that not only did it not solve, and again, I don't want to go too much because we don't know actually who this person is, right? We only know from what we see in the documentary and in these couple of tweets.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she says in the documentary that she was horribly depressed on the verge of suicide and then felt pushed to go through this transition, hated herself the entire way through, detransition, hated herself more for even doing it in the first place, and then now has this extra layer of I'm still this horrible person I was before, and now I'm a wretched sinner who still has these horrible demonic thoughts.
Yeah, it seems like Daisy has very much embraced the trad cath.
Right. And
just for normal people that don't know what that is right off the bat, that would be traditional Catholic. Like, she's the traditional, I want to be the stay-at-home wife and mother and do all the work at home and be, the wifely vessel for my husband. And obviously, like, super conservative Catholicism, like, hardcore.
Right. So 100% screw whoever put these thoughts into her head. I don't know if it was her family. I don't know if it's her now husband, whoever. That is some of the most evil shit you can do to somebody and to make them hate themselves. And again, we've talked about this. I mean, we both came from the atheist community. You know what my background was. One of my biggest triggers is when I see people who are pushed by religion and by religious people to put so much weight into how terrible they are as a person because they think God hates them, because they think they're undeserving of any respect, because they think God doesn't love them enough and because they're not good enough for God. At 100% screw that.
Yeah, I would say I personally would be more careful about like the you've been brainwashed narrative, because I don't think that there's enough evidence of that. Like I will again 100% at Daisy's word here that this is what she feels is right for her.
Yeah.
I can say I don't agree with the teachings that she's expressing here about like I'm a miserable sinner, Jesus Christ is my only hope. I don't agree with any of that. That's on the Catholic Church, and I hope that Daisy can alleviate the self-loathing and the depression and find something. I don't care what it is, but like there's still an underlying problem that she's trying to solve with Jesusing as hard as she can and just trying to be what she thinks God wants her to be, which is this vessel for her husband.
Well, why don't you read the other tweets to show that?
Yeah, just to give the example of that, some of her other tweets. A good way to cope with my occasional fantasies of being a dude is to put on a dress, put on an apron, and make my husband yummy meatloaf and mashed potatoes to be ready right when he gets home from work. That may be a joke. But that's the
world,
trad
life, yeah.
It's not. Like, it's 100% serious. And again, it's like, this is how I cure myself. I just push as hard as I can into that fantasy that I've created, which is, that I'm happy being this and, make those thoughts go away.
Right.
Another tweet, approximately 1946 to 1960 would have been a lovely time to have been alive as a teenager, young adult, if only.
That's
terrifying. Pre-civil rights movement,
yep.
But after World War II. Now it's a very narrow. This is just this is just conservatism and the idolizing that time period, the Leave It to Beaver era.
Right, the Norman Rockwell era, basically.
Mm-hmm. She's white, obviously, so no problems there.
Right.
She wouldn't have been able to get a divorce, get a credit card, have her own life, essentially, but that doesn't fit into her worldview anyway.
Right.
And again, as we kind of brought up previously, like the documentary tries to push the narrative of like we need to protect kids. This is all about trying to keep kids safe. Daisy disagrees. A tweet from her on November 2nd. For the record, the PragerU documentary focuses mainly on the transgender medicalization of minors. It really doesn't. I mean, it says that it does, but again, her story and the other story that were there
are not examples.
Does not fit in that.
But okay.
I didn't say this in the feature, but I wonder why you didn't wouldn't say this in the future, but I do not think there is a single person, whether they're 8 years old or 80, who should medically transition. Also, everyone should become Catholic. So again,
super accepting of other people's ideas.
Yeah, this is not someone who is against transitioning because it was wrong for them and they felt like they were pushed into it.
Right.
This is someone who just doesn't think it's appropriate to transition at all. And why would they have that
belief?
Even as someone who went through the process themselves and had the ability to do so, why would they take that right away from someone else? It literally probably saved her life as a teenager.
Because religion
and just straight conservatism.
Yes.
Because she was super conservative through the whole process. I don't know if this is a newer thing with the like extreme Catholicism, but yes, like those are the two reasons. It's just transitioning is just bad in general. It doesn't matter if you're an adult and you've thought this through and you've done all of the research and you know everything there is to know. It's still wrong. And that, again, goes against the narrative of the documentary, which is why it wasn't in there.
Yep.
But that is also what Dennis Prager and PragerU thinks, too. They're not going to make that documentary because they know that won't be popular because that's just bigotry. And they're trying to attract a wider audience. They already have the bigots. They're going to try to lie to everyone and say that it's just dangerous and we're preying on children and forcing them to transition.
And I do want to clarify as well. I mean, almost all medical research, I think, except for like one study that all conservatives try to push towards, which is also incorrectly read by them as well. Almost all research says that I think it's about 1%.
1%, yes.
If that, I think it's even
it was a meta study of 27 different studies that showed it was about 1%.
Yes, they actually regret transitioning.
And they even, they do show a study in this documentary, and they say transitions have gone up by 500% between 2013 and 2020.
And they interpret it wrong.
Well, and the numbers are, it's literally 200 people across those 7 years.
Yes.
200. Ooh, 500% it went up.
Scary.
Yeah.
And among that, they also had like a 1% regret rate.
It was 2 people.
Yeah.
Epidemic.
Apparently. So that's what right-wingers are spending millions of dollars on. So if you think that they're just going to sit idly by and be the wholesome, literal country bumpkins who are not going to do anything about this, you're wrong. They're waging a literal war and financing so much to influence people and to misinform and disinform people. And we're not going to do a Fox in the Head segment because this has been going very long, so we're going to go right to the election results. Play the music.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
So,
on Tuesday.
We're not going to keep doing that the whole time. Not doing the 2023 November elections. We didn't have anything in Wisconsin. I was very disappointed I didn't get to express my rights and vote on anything.
Sorry, I'm just imagining. You just have this urge. Oh, yes. I gotta express my rights.
I have a desire.
My civic duty.
I like filling in ovals on sheets of paper.
Gives blue ball the new meaning. All right. Where's my trombone?
But we are going to talk about the election results across 5 states that happened this week. First up, Kentucky.
Had a gubernatorial election.
I'm not doing it.
What?
We're not going back and forth.
Why not? Sorry. Okay. Did you want to?
No, you got this.
I'm doing it?
Yeah,
okay.
You got it.
Okay. The Democratic incumbent Andy Beshear beat Republican Daniel Cameron 52.5% to 47.7%.
In Kentucky.
Now, granted...
And he was the incumbent.
He was an incumbent. He's a very popular incumbent governor. He's also a very well-known, from a well-known family in Kentucky. And one of my favorite, actually, lines from a political scientist was, I think it was on the CNN panel, what a lot of political scientists like to call Kentucky is weird. Boy, do I agree with that. So I wouldn't put too much stock in this, but the idea that Kentucky can still have elected a Democratic governor makes me very happy. We also had a gubernatorial race in Mississippi where Republican incumbent Tate Reeves beat Democratic challenger Brandon Presley 51.6% to 47.1%. Much closer than I actually anticipated.
It was kind of a unique circumstance where Brandon Presley, yes, that Presley, he is the second cousin to Elvis Presley and leaned on that heavily in the campaign. Obviously, in Mississippi, that's very popular.
You know, he really, really wanted to have that like acceptance speech and just goes, thank you very much.
So I think that actually had a lot to do with why that race was so close.
Yeah, don't get any ideas that Mississippi's turning blue. It's not, I promise. Then the one that was on everybody's minds was the Ohio ballot measures. We talked about this earlier on, where Republicans tried to basically ruin these ballot measures with an earlier election by trying to raise the threshold for referendums from 50% to 60%. And thank goodness that did not
Well, that's
pass.
the reason.
Right.
This is the reason. Because they knew that the support for abortion rights was around 57%. That is what previous referendums have passed at. That's what polls show. So they knew, okay, support's around 57%. We will make it 60% as a threshold specifically so that the voters
don't have a voice.
Cannot vote to protect their rights to abortion. That should make everyone across the country just enraged.
Yep.
That is what the Republican, that's how they lead, by taking your voice away, taking away your ability to participate in democracy.
Yep. Or the idea, and I know it's such a cliche phrase, the subverting the will of the people, right? That's what it is. There's no tiptoeing around it. That's what's happening. But anyway, voters in Ohio said, screw you, Republicans. And they voted 56.6% to 43.4% to enshrine abortion rights into the state constitution. They also voted to legalize recreational marijuana, 57% to 43%.
Marijuana more popular than abortions in Ohio.
Woo!
Now, I think more than half the country has legal marijuana. Not in our state of Wisconsin, thanks to our Republican gerrymandered legislature.
Yep. We're just going to keep that Midwest list, just keep going smaller and smaller. We're going to be the only one left. Next up, we have the Virginia State Senate, where Democrats won the majority of the state Senate and stopped Glenn Youngkin from planning his 15-week abortion ban throughout the state.
And Glenn Youngkin took the biggest hit
Yes,
on
he
election
did.
day because he was
He stuck his neck out.
And he was the rising star of the Republican Party. Most people had kind of picked him if something were to happen to Donald Trump, if he ends up in jail, if the Republicans just decide that they cannot move forward with him as their candidate. It was Glenn Youngkin's name that was spoke most often as who could replace him. Because obviously everyone already hates all of the other candidates that are running for the nomination in the Republican Party, and their poll numbers are plummeting.
Right.
Glenn Youngkin was supposedly their backup plan.
Correct.
And that took a big hit, which is probably the biggest loss overall for the Republicans this week.
Well, what's interesting is that so Glenn Youngkin put in millions of dollars to push for these candidates to flip the state Senate, and they would have the trifecta. It didn't work. And what's even more interesting is that they went head first into the abortion ban for their campaigning. Like, I'm still kind of surprised they went head first and say, hey, we need to have a 15-week abortion ban. Now vote for me to take away your rights. And there were some other analysts that were kind of talking about how if they didn't do that, Democrats would have had nothing to run on and would have had a much worse turnout. But because they ran literally on the most galvanizing issue in the country right now, Democrats had so much to fire up their base and turn out and win elections. So good job, Republicans. You are political masterminds.
And continuing the Democratic domination of Pennsylvania elections recently, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court elected Democrat Daniel McCaffrey defeated Republican Carolyn Carluccio 53% to 47%, a 6-point victory, which is quite significant.
Yes, it is. And then I also just wanted to throw this in there as well.
Not a good night for Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, it's not really anything super important, but the right-wing hate group Moms for Liberty went hard on trying to push multiple school board candidates this election, and they all lost. They all just died and sucked, and everyone hates Moms for Liberty.
They were banned just like Planned Parenthood wants to do to
all the books,
all of the LGBT books in schools.
So great night for liberals, great night for Democrats, and conservatives are losing their collective minds. So let's take a listen to the very now famous Rick Santorum.
Google it.
damn it, on his thoughts of what happened last Tuesday. Pure democracies are not the way to run a democracy.
And now the Republican base is more motivated to vote in elections than the Republican base?
Actually, that's true, though. I can't believe it in my entire
certainly
life.
Historically has not been the case.
No, it hasn't. But literally, it's because of how stupid Republicans have been, how extreme they've been, and mostly Donald Trump, let's be honest here. But yes, for the last several elections, the Democratic Party has now shown, and I would also agree with the sentiment, especially after the 2023 election, we are now the more reliable voter base. Democrats come out in midterm elections way better than Republicans do. And now Republicans are the ones who are less informed, less engaged, and will come out more during the general elections.
And I do like the Democrats always spend more than Republicans. You mean as far as money that we can trace and see?
Well, and let's also, like you talked about historically just a little bit ago, let's also put a little clarification on that as well. They didn't give a rip when Democrats were being outspent 3-1 for the last 20 years. We are finally playing their game and we're finally winning at it, and now they're crying over it. So, I don't know, get bent.
And now they want to get rid of democracy because it doesn't work. We're not winning.
Again, screw the will of the people. We know better than you. So what does this actually mean, though, for 2024?
Nothing, really.
Man, you hit it right in the spot.
No previous election ever really means anything. The only one that you could point to is the spring election that they had where they protected the simple majority threshold to amend the Constitution. That predicted what was going to happen on Tuesday. But beyond that, nothing is quite such a one-to-one correlation and not so easy to just push to the next election to predict.
Well, and I would be very careful because, like we just talked about, these were lower turnout elections like you'd expect.
Which generally favor Republicans, but...
Right, and now they favor Democrats. But it's now we have to worry about the other thing that Republicans used to worry about back in the day, which is just because you win a low turnout election does not mean you're going to win a higher turnout election anymore. The mantra that more people voting means Democrats wins could not be farther from the truth anymore. So keep that in mind as well. Also, like we talked about before, Kentucky, Mississippi, those were weird circumstances, so don't take those as any type of predictive at all. Virginia, you could probably say a little bit, especially because of how they ran specifically on abortion. And you said Ohio as well, which I also agree could be a little bit predictive, saying, okay, so abortion is still very much salient on people's minds, and abortion still very much can drive people to the polls. That's good.
But now that's out of the equation, and they're not going to be voting for their abortion rights anymore because they would have felt like they protected that.
Correct.
It does show Democrats what they need to do moving forward. And it's exactly what I said last week when the GOP elected Mike Johnson, the most anti-abortion candidate you can possibly have, as their speaker. They need to push that over and over again. Anyone running against anyone in the House needs to push this person. My opponents
supported Mike Johnson,
voted for Mike Johnson to be the speaker. This is what he says about abortion. This is what he says about gay rights. This is what he says about privacy in your own bedroom, over and over and over again. And even when we talk about the presidential election, Joe Biden's team needs to push over and over and over again. Donald Trump is responsible for the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Yep, and he takes credit for it.
The most responsible person in the country. He elected 3 Supreme Court justices that are the ones that overturn Roe v. Wade. They were selected specifically because they would overturn Roe v. Wade. That was Donald Trump. Donald Trump did that. He does not care about your rights, and he will sign an abortion ban if he is the president. That's what needs to get pushed. Joe Biden will protect your rights to an abortion if you have them, unlike potentially Wisconsin, kind of up in the air at the moment. Or at least a third of the country at this point does not have access to an abortion. Joe Biden will protect the rights that you have. Donald Trump will not. That's what they need to push. push. Abortion is a winning issue for Democrats, and they need to embrace that. They need to try to focus on that as much as they can. And it doesn't even need to end at abortion, but just your rights. Republicans do not want everyone to have rights. They only want their donors to have rights. Those are the only people that the Republicans are working for. Just bring up the only thing that Donald Trump did as president was pass the largest corporate tax break in American history. That is the one signature piece of legislation.
And everyone hated it.
And Joe Biden tried to repeal it, and Republicans blocked that attempt. That's the Republican Party. That's the only thing that they care to protect. They don't care to protect your right to medical care. They don't care to protect your well-being. They don't care about whether or not you can pay off your student loans. They don't care about Ukraine being taken over by Russia. They care about their donors. That is who they're there for. And you just need to keep pushing that narrative. Republicans do not support civil rights. They do not support the right to medical care. And I think we've seen it. When that's been the issue, Democrats win, Republicans lose. And I hope that that's what's going to be the message. I hope that's what people are going to take out of this. But there has been a disturbing poll that's been going around recently where 6 swing states are being polled: Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And polls aren't really my thing, Joe. So I will let you go at this. Tell us what this poll says.
So you're correct. A lot of people have been saying a lot about this poll, especially on the Democrat side, because they're losing their freaking minds. Like Jason said, this poll shows that out of the 6 swing states, the New York Times Siena poll, which by the way is a very top tier poll, like they do a good job. They had over 3,000 or 3,600, I think, participants for this thing. So good on that. In 5 of those, and that would be Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, Trump is leading by around 4 to 7 points.
And these are 6 states that Biden won.
Correct.
In 2020.
The only state that Biden's leading Trump in the polls is actually Wisconsin.
Yay.
Let's go.
That's clearly our voice that is making the difference.
So what's going on here?
We are the bulwark against a fascist takeover of the country.
There you go. So what's going on here and how reliable is this? Well, we need to understand that this is just a snapshot on how people feel right now. This is well before the campaigns really have started kicking off. We don't officially have Trump as the nominee quite yet, even though we as politicos or commentators already know he's going to be the nominee. So keep that in mind as we go through these things. But what this poll does tell us is that people are not happy with how the country's going. According to the poll, 67% of the country is headed in the wrong direction. And that sounds very staggering. Actually, a lot of people like Fox News have been pushing this stat. Oh, everyone, 2 out of 3 people are saying that they hate the way the country's going. This is actually very average. It's very easy to say you don't like where the country's going, and we all hate where the country's going all the time because this is America. We just hate everything. And also, it's actually down from the 72% it was a year ago. So that's actually an improvement for Joe Biden, weirdly enough, but they won't talk about that. Another thing this poll shows is that people are motivated by the economy, or at least they say they are. Economic issues were consistently rated as far more important than social issues. And we're talking specifically, they were asked, what do you feel is more important to you? Abortion, gay rights, marijuana, etc., or economic issues such as taxes, jobs, inflation, things like that. And overwhelmingly, people all said economic issues were far more important. People barely, I think it was like 60-some% to like 20-some% in all age groups, including young American voters. On top of that, 81% said that they had a poor or fair view of the economy and not a positive view of the economy. And on top of that, they also trusted Trump more on the economy than Joe Biden.
Which is ridiculous.
Tell me about it. There was also some other fun stuff that showed that they believe that Trump's policies helped them far more than Joe Biden's policies, and that Joe Biden's policies have only been hurting them economically.
And really, what's the problem with the economy currently? Because the jobless rate is at an all-time low still and is always better than expected every time that report comes out. And that wages have actually started to come up now for the first time in a while. And we've got all of these unions getting huge wins all across the country. But what's the problem? Prices are higher. Inflation, right? We're calling it inflation for some reason.
But it's prices.
Yes.
Because inflation has been going down.
Yeah, the inflation index has been going down steadily for over 6 months now.
Well, let's also be real here. People also don't know what inflation actually means either.
But yes, I agree. Prices are still incredibly high, specifically grocery prices. And as has been shown, this is merely just price gouging and companies trying to recover profits that they lost during the pandemic. It doesn't have anything to do with economic policy, doesn't have anything to do with passing the Inflation Reduction Act. It doesn't have anything to do with getting checks in the mail for $600 3 years ago. It is just purely price gouging and companies being greedy. And I do think there is room for the Biden administration to actually do something about it. Pass some consumer protection laws, pass some transparency laws like they've done in Europe. They have laws that any time a company puts the same product out that is now in a smaller container, that has to be posted. We don't have those same laws here because we are beholden to the corporations. And again, the Biden administration can be criticized heavily for that. But for you to turn around and say, well, Trump is better on those things is absolutely insane.
It's going to get more insane, buddy.
Trump would hold you upside down and shake you for a nickel if he could.
This is just step one, man. Just get ready. And if you really want to see how crazy these people can actually be, and actually how good, we'll call it the right-wing media complex, is at influencing people and spreading misinformation and disinformation, let's talk about this.
Well, and it's not even just traditional right-wing media. CNN and the center, MSNBC, they all do the same thing because that's what gets views.
The biggest issue that voters actually had was not that they were worried about Democrats. They don't like Joe Biden. In fact, in several of these polls, a generic Democrat beat Donald Trump by 8 points. Kamala Harris, who they also hate, by the way, beat Trump by 2 points in all these states. The problem is Joe Biden, and they do not like Joe Biden. Can you guess what they don't like about him? He's too old. And for the record,
which is true.
Which is true. I'm not going to say that's not true.
Again, so is Donald Trump.
But here, you just said it right there. So according to the poll, when asked, do you believe Joe Biden is too old to be an effective president? 71% people agreed. Okay, fine. When asked, do you think Donald Trump is too old? Which again, I think Donald Trump is like 2 years younger?
He's over 3 years younger.
Okay, 3 years younger. 39% agreed that he's too old.
No matter who, between Trump and Biden, whoever wins the election next year will be the oldest president ever starting a term.
Right.
Whether it's 81-year-old Joe Biden or 77-year-old Donald Trump.
Also, when asked, do you believe Joe Biden has the mental sharpness to be an effective president? 62% of people said no for Joe Biden.
Which I just don't get. Like that, yeah, that was the Republican narrative going into the 2020 election. And we've had 3 years of him talking all the time. And again, I don't agree with a lot of what he does and says. Obviously, the handling of Israel has been a huge issue, but I don't see the Joe Biden is a bumbling dementia puppet.
Here you go, because when asked about Donald Trump about his mental sharpness, 54% of people said he was sharp enough to be president.
And I don't know if you've been watching any of his rallies lately. We haven't really been talking about him because I just am so sick of talking about Donald Trump.
Hey, we're about to get into World War II anytime now, right?
He's been making tons of mistakes. He thinks he's running against Obama. He thinks he beat Obama when he won the presidency 8 years ago. If anyone is losing it or seems like they're losing it because of all of the mistakes they've been making while giving speeches lately, it's been Donald Trump. And I get it. He's under a lot of stress. He's going through like 15 different trials right now because he committed so many crimes while he was the president.
Well, and I'll also include an article which is like a little research study by Media Matters, where they looked at the mentions of age between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in mainstream news outlets. And those outlets have talked about Biden's age twice as often as Donald Trump's age, which I think is, again, another way of just pushing. There's this weird double standard with Joe Biden. People associate him with being old and buffoonery, while Donald Trump just gets this free pass.
And like I said, it's not just Fox and Newsmax. It is all of the mainstream media.
Right. I mean, just from this one study, it's LA Times, New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. Not all super conservative right-wing outlets in there. So what does this actually mean? listen, I can be a bearer of a bit of good news for you guys. In the face of all this chaos, take a chill pill and relax. While I will not say to dismiss this poll, this isn't a good poll for Joe Biden by any means. It's not as bad and as doomsday as a lot of Democratic pundits want to pretend it is. As of right now, Joe Biden is the president, and he is what's on everyone's minds right now. It is very common for people to blame every single thing on the current president because that's all they know in government. You have to keep in mind that a lot of these people have absolutely no clue who their senators are, who their Congress people are. They just know the president is Joe Biden. And as we already talked about, when you have people who can just easily say everything sucks with the country, that's where you get the association. A good example is actually Barack Obama back in 2011, right before he got reelected in 2012. He had extremely similar numbers to Joe Biden. Now, the difference between Barack Obama and Joe Biden is that the polls have consistently showed Barack Obama to be beating and leading Mitt Romney, whereas Biden has been consistently been showing that he's trailing Donald Trump here. However, I still believe, this is just my own personal opinion though, we are a little bit early. You can relax. Statistics have always showed that people will come back to their home base and they will vote for people that they usually are comfortable voting for. People are just trying to express their frustration with Joe Biden right now. They're not starting to favor Trump more. And we're actually seeing that in the poll too, right? Where you have people who do not want to vote for Donald Trump. His unfavorable ratings are just as consistent as it was when they took the poll back in 2020.
Well, the thing that I thought was just amazing and to me just obviously wrong in this poll was, they have Trump against Biden in the 6 swing states.
Yep.
Nikki Haley is outperforming Donald Trump in most of those states. And generic Republican outperforms everyone in every single state.
Yep.
Which is just not true. Generic Republican, I assume that's Tim Scott. Tim Scott is not doing 17 points better than Donald Trump in Wisconsin.
No, he's not.
So something doesn't add up with the way these people answered this poll.
Well, correct. And there's also, there's another fun one where they asked, how legal should abortion be? And, should it be always legal under all circumstances? Sometimes legal, never legal, all that fun stuff. And 40% of people who would say they voted for Trump also said that abortion should be always legal. So, these people are not consistent, and that's how voters are. So give it time. We live in a calcified, I don't want to say polarized, but calcified political ecosystem right now where people just do not want to cross lines and vote for other people when they know how bad it can be. Give it some time. Let the ads come in. Let people remember how bad Donald Trump is. And also, the best part and the best news is that you'll have, in the poll, they said that at least 6% of Trump voters would immediately go to vote for Joe Biden if Trump was convicted of any of his crimes. That would push Joe Biden far into the winning category here. Now, I would argue that you actually don't even need to have him convicted. You just have to have the coverage of him facing his convictions.
There will be cameras in the courtroom in the Georgia trial.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm thinking too. So once the court cases start going, once people start seeing Trump a lot more often, they'll kind of revert back to 2020 ways, and they'll probably end up eking out a win for Joe Biden. That's my guess as of right now, but we have a lot of time to cover until then.
So polls and Dennis Prager.
Yeah, let's go with that. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. And on today's episode, we discussed the last Tuesdays. I wrote it.
Yep.
I can only blame myself.
He just reads what's on the prompter.
I do. I have no thinking skills of my own. And on today's episode, we discussed last Tuesday's
I have a pitch. I didn't have time to do it this week, but if we ever have problems with Fox in the Head or we just want to do something different, ask Mike Johnson.
Okay.
Where we do like a theme song like do 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 do. Ask Mike Johnson.